So this is just a beautifully vicious mirror that is held up to a culture where innocence is commodified, desire is manufactured, and nothing remains untouched by the human gaze. And a massive thank you for the immense generosity for those folks displayed on screen who get to enjoy bonus perks and benefits as YouTube channel members and patrons. Okay, so we're back with Sofia Isella. My apologies for getting back to it so late because, okay, confession, full transparency here. The first and last one that I did was The Doll People, and that was March 30th. It was by far the most difficult lyrical analysis breakdown that I have ever done on this channel. And I've been doing this for almost 3 years now. I think there's been almost 200 plus videos that I've done. And that one really challenged me. And I remember coming away post-recording and thinking, oh, I shit the bed with this one. I was not happy with the way that I analyzed it. I felt like I left so much on the table, and no one's going to like it. And it didn't get many views for the first week, first month. And then randomly, about a week and a half ago, it just started picking up. It got an extra 1,800 views. So that was strange. And apparently, a lot of people in the comments section thoroughly appreciated it. So thank you for that. And what that means is I will continue with her work. Right, so let's see what she's on about now. Oh boy. Okay, here we go. Okay, it's a visualizer. Okay. Ominous start.
Everything above the neck, everything but the imitation of youth must be given up at the desk. Everything but the look that sells.
Okay.
You're 12 looking 20, or you're 20 looking 12.
Oh,
and
no.
you're tight and you're baby and you're sexy about it. And you're subtle and though I didn't talk. His
Okay.
outfit and her eyes are crossed and big and bright and bug. And she withers around.
I can see where
like
this
a
is
salty
going.
slug. There's a beautiful balance to realize and reach when the women act like both a child and a sex beast.
Oh.
Not titillated by that delicate line between sex song and nursery rhyme.
Ooh,
Over time,
that's
you'll not remember
very
normalcy,
interesting line.
because normalcy is what you see repeatedly, so there will be nothing to miss. It must be so relieving for you to hear this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much what I expected. She wastes no time and she does not miss to talk about, well, to call it a difficult subject will be, is just not doing it any sort of justice. So I'm going to try and analyze that and break it down, and I'll do my best to do it justice. I'm not even sure YouTube will really allow this video to go up, but if it does, great. If not, then I'm just going to put it up for free on Patreon. Okay, so I've got a good idea what the song is about, and it's profoundly striking. This is the grotesque collision between innocence and commodification. And Sofia Isella just appears to construct a world in which femininity has become something to be curated, packaged, and presented for consumption. Where, I mean, as she said, where youth itself becomes another aesthetic commodity to be manufactured and just sold. Now, the recurring imagery of looking younger or older is deliberately unsettling. And believe me, it is. Because it exposes the absurdity of a culture that can make a woman feel as though her value resides in occupying some perpetually elusive threshold between adulthood and childhood. Okay, so when we turn to the lyrics, well, actually, the lyrics then turns its gaze toward the observer, which are the men spoken of in the song. And they are described as being captivated by that ambiguity that I just mentioned. And while the juxtaposition of a nursery rhyme with a sex song becomes a devastating metaphor for the way popular culture can gradually normalize contradictions that ought to remain troubling. And that in itself is a shocking thought, but it's reality. And that, I think, is where the passage becomes considerably more sinister than simple satire here. It's a hardcore song. And then there's that final moment, that suggests that repetition itself can corrupt our sense of what is ordinary. When an artificial image is encountered often enough, it ceases to feel artificial. And the abnormal becomes familiar. The manufactured becomes naturalized. And there is almost a weary sarcasm in the suggestion that this transformation must be relieving in a way. It's as though Sofia Isella is offering consolation for a world in which the burden of questioning these expectations has finally been removed. And at the same time, beneath the provocation, therefore, lies something considerably more mournful. It's a critique of how beauty, youth, and femininity can be transformed into commodities, and how repeated exposure to those manufactured ideals can quietly recalibrate our understanding of normality itself. So again, I think Sofia Isella isn't merely describing the phenomenon. I think she is holding up a mirror up to the machinery that created it. And she's inviting us to notice just how distorted our reflection has become as a result of the truths that she is conveying. Okay, here we go. I mean, it's a good song, interesting vibe, and she's just sort of talking very monotone with slight hints of expression, because I feel like she's trying to bring more emphasis to the words that she's speaking, which is, very powerful, unsettling, unnerving. Anyway, enough from me. Let's keep going.
So there will be nothing to miss. It must be so relieving for you to hear this.
Oh, now that hums. Oh.
If I mimic sex like some kind of clothed recreation, slightly alter your emotional situation, if I transform into masturbation motivation, something that's more open to interpretation.
Okay.
All of a sudden, your desire to understand had popped out of your ass. You're a wide-eyed kitten man. Your jaw one hinge, your trap door open wide, and in my words will pour like a fucking slip and slide.
Okay. A lot of truths in that. Somebody will put it there. Okay. Huh. Well, okay, I'm assuming that's a chorus. Ooh. Okay. Yeah, the story that is unfolding it's disconcerting. And she's not afraid to speak the silent part out aloud. Okay, so here Sofia Isella just sharpens the, for lack of a better word, I'm just going to say satire, into something almost weaponized, because the lyric is no longer merely describing the omnipresence of sexualization. It is demonstrating how readily human attention can be hijacked by it. So, to me, looking at the lyrics, it seems as though she, and by she I mean Sofia Isella, she imagines deliberately adopting the visual language of sexuality as a kind of performance, and then observes what happens to the audience's capacity for interpretation. Think of it, right? The listener, who might ordinarily overlook the message, becomes intensely attentive. There is a deliciously caustic irony in that transformation. The very thing being criticized becomes the bait with which the criticism is delivered. Brilliant writing. And she seems to be asking whether we have become so conditioned to respond to sexual imagery that it has become one of the few currencies guaranteed to purchase our attention. So again, it's the nature of the lyrical imagery that is so, so interesting. And the imagery of the listener's awakening is deliberately cartoonish, and it's almost slapstick. And it's turning intellectual curiosity into a physical spectacle. Let me put it this way. Once desire enters the room, suddenly the audience is alert, astonished, and ravenous for meaning. So very, very brilliant writing from her there. And then comes the devastating refrain, right? Sex is everywhere. Now, its repetition gives the phrase the quality of an advertising slogan, and I think she does that on purpose because it's essentially like a cultural mantra endlessly reproduced until it becomes almost invisible through familiarity. Sex is not merely presented as an aspect of modern media, it has become a lens through which almost everything can be interpreted. And when something does not naturally contain that element, the machinery of culture can simply insert it. At least that's what I'm getting from what she's singing. And again, what makes this particularly compelling in the context of this song, like Above the Neck, is that Isella is ultimately interrogating attention itself, right? What does it take to make us look? What does it take to make us listen? And why? In a culture saturated with imagery designed to stimulate desire, can provocation sometimes become more powerful than truth? Maybe I've deeped that a bit too much, but that's what I'm getting from it, right? So beneath the wit and theatrical vulgarity lies a rather bleak observation, and I think it's this. When something is sexualized often enough, it ceases merely to be something we encounter and becomes something we have been trained to expect. And no, I think that's a good enough interpretation. Okay, let's keep it going.
Your hands are down your pants, you're settled in for the night. It's time to watch 18-year-olds on a private browser site. But 18 years is short enough for you. They have pigtails and Hello Kitty shorts onto undo. They've learned that the closer you look like to a kid, the more money you get from a 42-year-old piece of shit. So on screen they'll touch a dick and act so confused because cluelessness is easier to get off to. There's no button to push for their face. I'm not trying to seduce you, fuckface. I'll be out in your lawn, covered in slime. I get away with so much shit cause you think I'm hot. Oh, you'll praise the virgin, self-absorb it. You think your penis is very important, but if something's dirty after you touch it, the problem is your hands, dipshit, cut it.
Cut it off, eh? Okay. I mean, okay. Okay, I'm gonna pause it there. So I'm a little bit on edge. I was actually watching Obsession before settling down to record. By the way, that movie is, I mean, it's bloody brilliant. But freaking hell. Ooh. Okay, anyway, back to the song. Okay, look. This is perhaps the most ferocious passage in the song. I didn't think it could get more violent because Sofia Isella, she just abandons almost every veil of abstraction and turns her satire to, well, directly towards the consumer. So the grotesque opening deliberately creates an image of, what's the word? Voyeurism? Voyeurism and complacency. And before the lyric exposes the dark machinery behind that fantasy, she suggests that an industry can discover what its audience rewards and then manufacture increasingly disturbing versions of that aesthetic for profit. So, from my perspective, and please correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, the crucial point is that the song does not merely condemn the performers or the imagery being consumed, it redirects responsibility towards the person who chooses to consume it and more importantly, toward the culture that financially incentivizes its production. I think that's right to say. But there's a little bit more that I want to linger on. And it's the recurring suggestion of artificial innocence becomes particularly significant here, right? Because innocence is presented not as something inherently sexual, but as something that can be commodified and performed when an audience has demonstrated that it will pay for the illusion. So Sofia Isella's language here, consequently, it becomes deliberately abrasive, which is what I'm used to based off the doll people. And the insults, the profanity, and the grotesque imagery function almost like a verbal slap. In other words, I feel like she refuses to permit the listener the comfortable distance of pretending the exploitation is something else and somewhere else and somebody else's problem. So she then pivots back, and that lyric pivots towards its most interesting moral argument, right? She rejects the idea that her appearance, beauty, or perceived desirability somehow constitutes an invitation. That culminates in the extraordinary blunt metaphor of the hand. So the problem is not the object being touched, but the person doing the touching. So I think, well, in other words, Sofia Isella, she just dismantles the ancient rhetoric maneuver of transferring responsibility from the perpetrator to the person or object. And that's the object upon which desire has been projected, right? Okay, so the closing command. I think it's intentionally excessive, almost carnivalesque in its violence. But that extremity serves a purpose, right? Because after spending the song examining how culture can disguise predation beneath beauty, innocence, and desirability, entertainment, whatever, she just finally strips the argument down to its barest moral anatomy. Desire does not absolve behavior, and attraction does not constitute consent. And the responsibility for what a person chooses to do with their desire belongs to the person who possesses it. So, what makes that passage so uncomfortable and consequently so effective is that Sofia Isella refuses to make us as the listeners comfortable enough to remain merely an observer. She turns the mirror around, and suddenly the audience has to examine not only what it is looking at, but the eyes doing the looking. And, okay, I just want to take this back a little bit more, and let's keep it going. The graphics are interesting. They are aiding the story. What is with this worm? What does it represent? Okay. Alright. She does give very intricate commentary on modern day society, especially the sexualized nature of femininity and the abuse thereof. So, I agree. Whoa. Key in the home? Okay. I think I get it. Oh, harrowing message. My giddy aunt. Okay. Well, oh gosh, that image. All right. Sofia Isella, She does not miss. And this is my second song reacting to her. So, okay, a lot to go through. Let's do it. Okay, so the chorus has already established its central thesis, right? But what fascinates me here is the way the bridge turns repetition itself into evidence. They'll put it there. Now that becomes almost incantatory, right? Because it's as though the song is demonstrating the very cultural mechanism it has been describing. So what do I mean by that? You repeat an idea often enough, and it begins to feel less like an argument and more like an environmental fact. And I think we've observed that in modern day culture. The phrase eventually dissolves into the word everywhere. And it's creating a kind of lyrical claustrophobia where there is seemingly no escape from the lens through which everything is being interpreted. Again, brilliant writing from her. And then what she does, she just, what can we call it? It's an unleashing. She unleashes a succession of absurd, deliberately exaggerated cultural stereotypes. Women are depicted as being expected to perform competence and sexuality simultaneously. Femininity becomes a kind of theatrical multitasking in which a woman can be celebrated for her accomplishments only when they remain accompanied by an aesthetic performance of desirability. Now, how do we know that? Well, move on to the next line. We draw the lines. Now, that's particularly delicious because it suggests that society establishes arbitrary boundaries about what is acceptable, then promptly moves them whenever entertainment, profit, or attention demands it. Now, that was striking, but what I found particularly interesting is the line about anything being true if it rhymes. So that extends that satire into the realm of rhetoric itself. So in other words, persuasion can become more important than truth when something sounds sufficiently catchy. I think that's what she's communicating. And Sofia Isella then begins deliberately mangling masculine and religious symbolism. Keys, swords, sexual conquest, and sanctification. And she does that until the language of virality starts to resemble the language of worship. And that is, I don't think that's accidental from her. She is exposing the strange cultural double standard whereby male sexual appetite can be rendered comic, heroic, powerful, or even celebratory, whilst women are simultaneously expected to navigate an entirely different set of contradictory expectations. So, I mean, look, I could be completely way off base here, but I think that's what she's talking about. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm open to learning. And then the grotesque escalation towards increasingly outrageous examples is therefore less about the literal images than the absurdity of cultural logic itself. So everything becomes consumable. Everything becomes a spectacle. And everyone is assigned a role within that spectacle. Yet, the final repetition that we see here, right? You live to please. Now, that is where the satire acquires its bleakest resonance. Sorry for using the word satire. I can't think of a better word right now. But it suggests a world in which the individual is gradually taught that existence itself is performative. Please the audience. Please the market. Please the gaze. Please the expectation. So the song's great trick is that beneath all its vulgarity, absurdity, and comic violence lies an extraordinarily serious question. When a culture teaches us that everything exists for consumption, what happens to the human being who was never supposed to be a product in the first place? Something worth thinking about. Well, folks, that's all I have time for. Again, the song has been mentally and emotionally exhausting. And I hope I did it justice. Again, I feel like I didn't, but let's see. I'm more than open to hearing your interpretation of it and being educated on this. I am just a poet and a philosopher. Not really anything special, but I do desire to learn. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please do like, comment, subscribe, and share if you can. And if you would like to support the channel in a different way, you can do so using any of the links in the description below. My PayPal, my Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, or YouTube Super Thanks or YouTube channel membership are all valid ways in which you can support me. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, please do be kind, be gentle, be respectful to one another, and help each other out when you can. And I'll see you lot in the next video. Take care. Cheers.